All right. With their faces on camera, I just want you to know Luke is here instead of Greg. He is already bossing me around. Last thing he said right before I turned this camera on was what, Luke? What'd you tell me?
Have a good show.
Don't
The
tell me.
audacity. The
Don't boss.
audacity.
Don't boss me around like that. I can't work under these conditions. Anyway, hi, it's me, your diva, Pat Kreitlow, for Up North News Radio. That's Luke in for Greg, who hopefully will feel better very soon. Coming up on the program this morning, comments we just found out about. Eric Hovde ran for Senate in 2012, and it didn't work out well for him. And then he went away, by and large. Turns out all these years he was appearing on right-wing radio here and there. Obviously, folks weren't thinking much about it. But now that he's running for Senate again, we're kind of going back through some of his old appearances and wow, what he has to say about Native Americans and what he considers to be socialism is the latest example of something that's just going to raise some eyebrows. We're going to talk about that coming up. Let's see, we're going to mark the 40th anniversary of Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA album. 40th anniversary. That's unbelievable. And then quite a powerhouse 7 a.m. hour to tell you about. We have Congressman Mark Pocan at 7:30 for his regular monthly visit. And given yesterday's circus with the way Republicans treated Dr. Anthony Fauci in a hearing yesterday, I'm sure Congressman Pocan will have some things to say. But prior to that, at 7:05, we're going to have Assembly Representative Katrina Shankland on talking about her campaign for Congress. She's one of 3 candidates running for the 3rd Congressional District seat. We have Eric Wilson on tomorrow, Rebecca Cook on Thursday. And so all of that, plus Chad Holmes and more, coming up exactly 4 minutes from now. 6:06 across the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll see you soon. All right, kids, here we go.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It's 6:06 on this Tuesday morning, June the 4th, 2024. It's another beautiful day to have you here up north, live from Lake Wissota, from wherever you're listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, through the Civic Media app, watching us on the social media video feeds, or later on demand by podcast. Nice to have you here. Got a question for you. How humid is it by you? Looking at the current conditions around the state, I was looking not just at temperature, but humidity. And the lowest I could find was 84% in Oshkosh. That's the cool part of the state right now. 84% humidity. Other places like Wausau and Park Falls, 100% humidity and fog. So summer's on the way, especially, well, here, let me just share these temperatures right away, and then I'll tell you what's coming up on the broadcast this morning. It's 68 up here in Chippewa Falls, 67 in Hayward, Park Falls at 65 in fog, Wausau 64 in fog, Green Bay 64, La Crosse 67, Wisconsin Rapids 62, Oshkosh is at 69 already, Madison 66 and Waukesha 63. And I hadn't looked at the radar yet because, of course, we had our rain and thunderstorms, yesterday morning, and then slowly it made its way across the state here, and just like Brittany told us it was going to do. And so now, let me zoom this thing out. Well, there's nothing that's really, a lot of things have moved out of northeast Wisconsin by now, but there's a whole lot more that's coming our way tonight. So we'll have Brittany here a little bit later on with the details of the forecast. Here's what's coming up this morning. We regret to inform you that Eric Hovde has said even more questionable things over the past few years than previously thought. We'll report on newly uncovered 2017 comments belittling Native Americans in order to try to make some kind of a point about what he thinks is socialism, a word that a whole lot of people like to use without really seeming to know what it really means. We also have quite the list of guests in our second hour. Congressman Mark Pocan will be here for his regular monthly visit. And given the circus that took place yesterday in a congressional hearing room and the behavior, I mean, the childlike or worse behavior of some Republicans in a panel with Dr. Anthony Fauci, I sense that Congressman Pocan is going to have a few things to say about his colleagues there on Capitol Hill. Prior to that, at 7:06, we're going to have State Representative Katrina Shankland here. Katrina is one of three candidates running for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District Democratic primary, and we have all three of them this week. We have Representative Shankland today. We have Eric Wilson tomorrow. We have Rebecca Cook on Thursday. So if you are interested in that race at all to see which of these three will be taking on incumbent Republican Derek Van Orden in the fall, then you're going to be wanting to listen to these three interviews today, tomorrow, and Thursday, each one running from 7:06 through the bottom of the hour. We will also have Chad Holmes stopping in, telling us about what's on his show on Bull Falls Radio. And finally, in the on deck circle, getting set to pinch hit for Greg Bach. Oh, goodness, he's got a drum for himself. Luke Mathers, everybody. There you go. Mr. Mathers, good morning.
Good morning,
He's so busy playing playing his own walk-up music, he forgot to turn on his mic. How are you?
I'm doing well. I saw that sound effect in the folder as I was getting things ready for the show this morning, and I was like, I can't not.
Like, hey, why not?
Because I had
right?
a feeling you were going to play. You're going to tease the adventure that we're going to have for the next 2 hours.
We did, and here we are. And for folks that catch Luke's regular appearances Thursday mornings at 7:50 for the last 10 weeks, roughly, we've been talking about Top Chef Wisconsin. Because Luke is not just a fan, he's a super fan of the show. And not just the Wisconsin season. I mean, like, have you watched like all 20 seasons prior
I've seen every single episode.
You've seen every single episode.
I've seen all of them.
So we're gonna do a little kitchen chat coming up here in just a couple of minutes as well. We just want to wish Greg well. Hope he feels better soon. He's under the weather, and so I know people yesterday were like, "We didn't hear Greg very much." Greg didn't feel so good, and we thank him for coming in, but he shut the camera off. He's like, "I'm just going to be over here." I'm like, "Okay, thank you."
We have a scheduled weekly check-in and in the afternoon on Mondays, and he and I were starting to talk, and I was like, dude, if you're not feeling well, just go home now. And so I had a feeling that I was going to get a text message last night or an update saying, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be in tomorrow. So I was kind of mentally preparing myself, but he needed to be sent home and rest up because he's not feeling the greatest.
Yep. And that happens. We all get under the weather. So hopefully he feels better real soon. I want to ask you, though, before I get into the cooking questions for you, and it's also National Cheese Day, so we're going to incorporate that into the discussion as well.
National Cheese Day in Dairy Month? Oh, my goodness.
In June Dairy Month.
Prepared.
I know. Just so many worlds coming together here. So we'll actually start sports a little early because the Brewers lost in Philadelphia 3-1. Did you catch the game and or see the welcome home that Rhys Hoskins got from the Philly crowd?
I did not catch last night's game. I had listened to pretty much the last 4 or 5 in a row. So last night I had not tuned into the Brewers, but how was Rice received back?
Oh my goodness! I posted on social media. I said, "Damn you, Phillies fans! You have a reputation. They have a reputation for being, mean and jerks and everything."
Crass. Yeah, a little crass.
Yes, and Rhys, played the first 7 years of his career in a Phillies uniform. He sat out all of last year with an injury, and then signed with the Brewers as a free agent. So it was his first game back. And I mean, what you would normally expect from a Philly crowd. And instead, adulation, the standing ovation that he got when he came to the plate the first time. And he was getting teary. I was getting verklempt. I mean, everybody was just like, I don't recognize these fans, but clearly they love their Rhys Hoskins and they miss him. And, and then he hit a home run in the 7th inning, but it was the Brewers' only run, which is why they lost 3-1. But it was just another one of those, this is why I love baseball moments, because you get something like that.
As Brad Pitt says in Moneyball, how can you not be romantic about baseball?
Exactly. See and all the best movies, all the best sports movies are kind of baseball based. Yeah, there's Caddyshack. But I'm talking about the ones that celebrate the sport.
Miracle are up there. Like those two are very good, and they're not baseball movies.
They're okay. They're okay. You can tell I'm much more of a baseball fan, which
that's
is
fair.
That's actually
I'm not a hockey guy, but that's why Miracle is one of my favorite all-time sports movies because it is just it transcends sport.
Okay, the timer's going off. We can only talk sports for so long. We start getting notes from people.
Noted.
Like get back to the news. Okay, here's the news. It's National Cheese Day. So
there we go. That's news.
Hey, works for me. I was very tempted yesterday to pick up some Hooks aged cheddar. I was in a hurry and ultimately didn't grab it, but now that I see it's Cheese Day, I may have to go back.
Yeah,
and
you're
pick it up.
Yourself.
Get some Marietta Gouda because there's now a Marietta Gouda store in Eau Claire. Fresh off the farm in Thorpe over there, or Torp, if you will. So yeah, we're celebrating all things cheese here. In my case, the cheese I wanted to mention, my original question for you was about cast iron skillets, because over the weekend, Sherry and I once again made one of our favorite things, which is a cast iron skillet deep dish pizza. Oh, you saw it? Yeah, that got posted on social media. Of course, it did.
Of course.
Oh my goodness, so much mozzarella, but it's the Parmesan is what really makes it over the top of it, which you don't think of very much with a pizza. The garlic and everything else. But I figured for all the Top Chef stuff you were watching, and forgive me if I've asked before, but I don't know if I have, if you are a cast iron skillet cooker yourself.
We utilize it, but not super often. So there's definitely a variety of recipes that we will use for it, but especially anything that needs to go in the oven. Like if it's got to get like seared and then into the oven, big fans of the cast iron then. But I was raised on the cast iron because my family was an outdoorsy family. We go camping very frequently.
Again, forgive me for the I botched up the intro. Eagle Scout Luke Mathers is
all
with
good.
us here. Yeah. Okay.
You are forgiven.
Okay.
But yes, so we would use the cast iron camping all the time, and then being on cast iron duty to clean it was always, big pain in the butt. But that was one of those scheduled chores for somebody in the troop to make sure that the cast iron was properly taken care of.
Well, you just put it in the dishwasher, right? No, you do not. No.
Oh no, that's not something to joke about.
No, you don't. No,
Some people may now be going to put their cast
No.
iron.
Nobody's
and
nobody's
folks,
doing
please
that.
do not do that.
No, that's fine.
So,
no, I really like mine, and we use it for all kinds of things. Make a shepherd's pie. I do my steaks in there now. I mean, that is finally how we like them best. Although it gets really smoky sometimes, and I have found that if you do the reverse sear thing instead, where you put the steaks on the skillet, put it in the oven, get them to near the temperature you want, and then sear the heck out of them on the skillet on the stovetop. That's really good. But what I want to do,
I have not tried that yet.
What I want to do, one thing I haven't made yet, is I've seen recipes for a cast iron skillet chocolate chip cookie. But it occurs to me, I've made so many things in, salty things like, steaks and pizzas and things like that maybe a cookie wouldn't work out so well. So
I think you need to get those like individual little tiny ones.
That's what I'm thinking.
You go that route, and that way you don't have to worry about all the other savory flavors bleeding into your cookie. You've just got individual pans for the cookie. But
so there you go. Father's Day. If I'm sure my daughters listen every day, so we're looking like the 6-7 inch, personal pan pizza
plenty
size.
Of time.
Yeah,
you got 12 days, plenty of time to get that order in, send it to the house.
There.
Yeah,
that'll work.
But really, cast iron queso, that's a good one on National Cheese Day. Ooh,
did you say cast iron queso?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I never thought.
You just throw it in the pan. Yeah, you throw all the things in there, melts. It's set to go.
Okay. All right, somehow I got it. Now my mouth is watering while I go do this promo over here. You can stay up to date on all the unabashedly Wisconsin news we give you in the Up North News daily newsletter. Christina Laurie's got an article in here today about National Cheese Day and how it got started. Some fun facts about cheese and where Wisconsin stands, not just against other states, but about other countries as well. And places where you can actually get cheese for a lower price. So get to our daily newsletter. Go to UpNorthNewsWI.com, newsletter in the top banner, and get yourself subscribed right then and there. My other colleague, Sharita Booker, our social media manager, comes along in just a bit and is going to talk about some of the most popular stories on our social media platforms coming up, and a little bit about the latest farm conditions as well. Wherever you're listening across Wisconsin on this Tuesday morning, when you're here, you're up north, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. That is the USC Trojan Marching Band playing at Dodger Stadium on this day in 1979. Fleetwood Mac made the request. The band gathered. They recorded them for use in their song Tusk, the title track, to the first album since a little project they did called Rumors. We'll have more in today's history lesson coming up in just a little bit. On the text line, we got a question from Ben in Oshkosh asking if we are out of drought status yet. I'm going to talk more about that later in the morning, as we often do on Tuesdays with the latest crop report. Can tell you that unless you're in places like Sauk, Juneau, Adams, Marquette, Ashland, or Iron counties, drought status, not really much of a thing anymore. All right, let's visit with Sharita Booker, social media manager for us here at Up North News. Sharita, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. Let's jump into our review of 3 stories that you'll find on Facebook, Instagram, other platforms that are getting a lot of comments or a lot of views. Let's start with our newsy one first about teacher pay in Wisconsin, and especially the struggle this time around in smaller rural districts. So tell us about one superintendent up in Washburn County and what he has to say about all this.
Yeah, so Shell Lake Superintendent Todd Fellhopper says he wishes he could pay his teachers more, but with the rural district of about 600 students in northern Wisconsin, he's already operating under a deficit. So we put together a graphic on how does Wisconsin's teacher pay compared to other states. And according to a new report from National Education Association, the average salary for Wisconsin teachers is $62,524, while the national salary is $69,544. And in our neighboring state, Minnesota, the salary is $70,005, and coming in at the top paid across the nation is California with a $95,160 average salary. We had tons of comments on Facebook. Tamara said teachers are extremely underpaid for their work that they do, but they do it anyway because they are amazing. Most people wouldn't last one day in a classroom. Hats off to all who decide to take their time to a career in education. And Jeremy said 62,000 in Wisconsin goes a lot farther than 95,000 in California. No one can live in California anymore with their insane inflation.
Well, that's true. I'll definitely grant that. But instead of comparing Wisconsin to California, in this case, the story is noting that it's in rural districts where, 62,000 will take you a bit more than maybe in a lot of large cities. But these increases are not keeping up with inflation. They're not comparable to what they could get almost literally a stone's throw away across the border in Minnesota, which is why we end up losing some of our best teachers to some other neighboring states. And as per pupil aid, may go up per pupil, but if you have fewer pupils because you're in a rural district and, people are moving away or aging out, then you're still going to get less in funding. So the whole point that, Sharita's seen from the comments and from the graphics is just to let people see, what is the state of teacher pay in Wisconsin these days, and then listen to your candidates this fall and see what they have to say about this. I was very encouraged at all of the comments on the post that understood, how difficult teaching is, not to take it for granted. Clearly, there are a couple of people in here that still do, to which I say, good luck, give it a try. But I think, again, a good series of graphics that folks might want to check out on our social media sites. The second one we're going to talk about is about the hamburger and whether the hamburger was really invented in Wisconsin. I've never really known what to make about this, Sharita. Tell us more about this controversy.
Well, many other states claim to be the birthplace of the burger, but Seymour, Wisconsin is the only state that has evidence dating back to 1855 or 1885 with the article printed from Appleton that tells the story of a 15-year-old boy named Charlie Green. He was initially selling meatballs, but discovered that people wanted to take the meatballs on the go. So he started to smash the meatballs between 2 pieces of bread. And so that post had more than 400 likes on Facebook. And Corey said, yet there is no long-standing hamburger joint in Seymour. And someone else said that the Burger Fest that they usually have annually celebrating Charlie was canceled this year because of construction. So that's unfortunate this year.
Oh, gosh, yes. And then, of course, you get into the whole notion of, what's a normal burger, what's a smash burger. I for one, heard this story and was thinking, oh, a meatball sandwich. See, I love a good meatball sandwich, Sharita. What's your own favorite for the way that you would have a burger?
I recently started liking smash burgers. I think because
Did
they're
you?
so popular these days, but they're like the nice little thin crisp patty. I love that.
Hmm. I've become a real fan of sliders because you kind of get, I was going to say you get portion control, but seriously, who eats one slider? Right.
Right.
It's like the bite-sized candy bars. Am I going to have one, or am I going to have more than if I had just purchased a full-size candy bar? But be that as it may, third story is a graphic out of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, but it is a take on other social media posts that I've seen all over the place. It's basically what a Wisconsinite quiz.
Yes. How Wisconsin are you? And it has a list of things like that typical Wisconsins know or have done or said. And you give yourself 1 point for each thing that you've done. So let's play.
All right, well, let's do it. Let's see. Let's start with. No, I shouldn't start with that. It's not radio friendly. We're not going to talk about what fib means. We're just going to move on. Have you ever done jump around at a wedding? Yes or no?
No,
Have you grilled when there's still snow on the ground?
I have.
Okay. Have you been to a fish fry?
Absolutely.
Have you eaten at a supper club?
No,
Okay. Have you been to a baby shower at a bar?
I don't believe so.
No, not in your part of the state. Much more common up here. Uh, have you argued about where up north begins?
Definitely.
have you chugged a spotted cow?
Yes,
Have you ever said "ope"?
of course.
Okay. And have you ever insisted to others that the UP actually really belongs to Wisconsin?
No.
Okay. So there's several more questions here. So you'd give yourself a grade on this, and the scale runs from 0 to 5. Are you sure you're not a fib? 6 to 10 is Scotty wannabe. 11 to 15 is Dairy State darling, and 16 plus is, it says, born and bred. I'm definitely not born in Wisconsin. I'm definitely bred in Wisconsin. And Sharita, I think the only reason you come in at Dairy State darling is we just have to get you up north here a few more times to do some of these other things.
Yeah, and I definitely have to go to a supper club. Like that's on my.
Yes, we have to get you there. So that's still on my staff retreat list for next time around. Thanks for playing along as always. Have a great day, Sharita Booker. We'll keep watching what you're doing online. I'll talk to you again soon.
Bye, Pat.
Luke, any chance that you kept score for yourself on whether you are born and bred
I need to
Wisconsinite?
go take the whole quiz, but I think I can get 16 plus. I think I can do it.
I think you would actually invent some questions that other people should do. That's how scrawny you are. Speaking of which,
that is a compliment.
that's right. It just takes me right into the Scotty Summer Text to Win contest. We're going to tell you more about that. 707 is when you're going to want to be tuned in for today's keyword. Text that, and you could be in the running for some prizes. Pam Yonke has the Midwest Farm Report and more news coming up. You're up north. I'm having a tough time today with age, and it's not just the pending milestone birthday, but it's the fact that this album, Born in the USA, came out 40 years ago today. Bruce Springsteen's 1984 blockbuster. We'll be playing a few more cuts from that throughout the course of the morning here on Up North News Radio. I'm Pat Kreitlow. It is 6:35. Let's unpack some more of the news, and we'll get to Eric Hovde's comments about Native Americans and what he considers to be socialism coming up in just a bit. But a reminder, as always, you can reach us by phone or by text at 855-75-CIVIC. Again, 855-75-CIVIC. You can call or text that number. You can use the Civic Media app to call us or text us. You can comment on social media. We're on a couple of Facebook pages, a YouTube page. Just search for Up North News WI. And you can email us. Our email address is radio@upnorthnewswi.com. There is a new political commercial that you're going to be seeing on TV starting this morning, and Up North News was the first to be notified by Evergreen Action. That is a climate advocacy group that it has put together a partnership that is spending more than $1 million on ads in Wisconsin and Michigan to do something that we have talked about quite often on this program, and that is to tout the climate and energy provisions of President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. Because for all of the sideshows and for all of the carnival atmosphere that accompanies any presidential election, much less one involving Donald Trump, there always remains a I'm so often reminded of the Affordable Care Act and how people back in 2010 said that they did not support the Affordable Care Act. But then when you ask them about each specific provision in it, they favored it. What they heard about the package, they said was, no bueno. Again, until they had to learn what it was about. And now support for it is at an all-time high. And the same is going to happen with the Inflation Reduction Act, but only to the extent that groups like Evergreen Action, the Biden campaign, and others talk about the ways that it will create jobs, lower energy costs, help offset the effects of a changing climate, and more. The ads thank the governors in their respective states, Tony Evers here and Gretchen Whitmer over in Michigan, for helping to work with President Biden to implement those parts of the Inflation Reduction Act. So look for that ad on your TV screens and probably multimedia screens as well. As we also first told you about it Up North News yesterday, a top Biden surrogate is coming to Wausau, Green Bay, and Milwaukee, and that would be former Alabama Senator, former U.S. Attorney Doug Jones. He will be in Wausau, Green Bay, and Milwaukee on Wednesday and Thursday. The topic there is Social Security and Medicare, and essentially just calling out the ways that as much as Donald Trump tries to have it both ways, frankly, as much as almost any elected Republican tries to have it both ways on Social Security and Medicare, their record is clear in terms of what they've actually proposed. Not what they've said on the campaign trail, not what they've said in talk shows, but what they actually submit, which would lead to cuts. Trump is far more likely to want to privatize Medicare. Up North News had a good article a week or so ago about Medicare Advantage plans and how they are far less than what they're made out to be in all of these celebrity-driven TV ads, much to the detriment of traditional Medicare, which maybe doesn't have things like, a free shuttle ride to the clinic, but it lets you pick any doctor or provider that you want. Something you don't get on Medicare Advantage plans where you end up with a bill, you end up seeing all kinds of fees on there. And that's something that Trump wants to further do, is continue pushing Medicare Advantage, which is essentially a giveaway to the private for-profit insurance industry to undermine Medicare. And of course, remarks on Social Security and related programs are certainly out there from Trump, where he said, back in February on CNBC, there's a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting. He then went on to mention waste and bad management, and later claimed that's the only thing he's talking about cutting, but there really isn't a trust issue on there, especially since the last time he was president. He proposed $45 billion in cuts from the Social Security, disability insurance, and supplemental security income programs for disabled children and adults. as one way to get a foot in the door toward further cuts toward Social Security. So look for Doug Jones, who has been talked about as a potential Supreme Court nominee in a second Biden term. Look for Doug Jones to be in Wisconsin over the next couple of days to be talking about, the threats that Trump has posed to Social Security and to Medicare. And a follow-up on a story we had yesterday about a member of the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents, Robert Atwell, a Scott Walker appointee who said that he was going to stick around, even though his term ends later this month. And as a result, it led to Governor Evers making a comment about that. Let's see if I have the exact quote here. Here it is. I know Bob Atwell, and he was a person of extraordinary integrity. Something happened along the way that caused that not to happen. I do believe at some point in time he'll decide to get off the UW Board of Regents. Well, hours later, as I first saw in Wisp Politics and later by the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Bob Atwell has now said that he will step down from the Board of Regents when his term expires so that Governor Evers can appoint a successor. Now, that successor will serve and await Senate confirmation, but as we've discussed at length, state Senate Republicans are in no hurry to confirm Evers' nominees and in fact have rejected many of the nominations without any just cause whatsoever. Just cause. No just cause, just cause. That's the way that Republican lawmakers have been running things with Governor Evers since his election. All right, well, now we get to U.S. Senate candidate Eric Hovde and his latest remarks on Native Americans. It was something that I first noticed at WCPT Radio in Chicago. They have a website called Heartland Signal, where they follow the comings and goings of Midwestern politics. And these comments are from 2017, and I want to explain why. Eric Hovde ran in 2012 for U.S. Senate. A lot of folks don't remember that, but in 2012, there was actually a rather divisive four-way primary amongst Republicans for U.S. Senate to run for an open seat. Tammy Baldwin was going to be running for the seat on the Democratic side. Four different Republicans were vying to take her on. Former Governor Tommy Thompson eventually emerged from that primary, but it was a bruising primary, and Tammy Baldwin later went on to win and has served ever since. Now Hovde wants to run against Baldwin again. There's no primary at the moment this time around. His only opponent appears to be his own words, because after 2012, folks didn't really pay much attention to Eric Hovde, but he still made some appearances here and there on right-wing talk radio stations. And so as people have been going through and trying to find some of these appearances and reading what he says or looking for tape of it, you find things. Some of these things we have talked about previously. His comments about farmers, of course, the more recent comment about people in nursing homes are in no point to vote. Maybe there should be a what you would call a fat tax on health insurance plans. That he would target obese people. None of those around here in our zip code. But now there's found from another talk show in 2017. He essentially belittles Native Americans and blames what he calls socialism for the things that, ail our indigenous communities. Here is about a minute and a half of Eric Hovde on a radio show talking about Native Americans and what he considers to be socialism.
A horrible social impact.
It does.
I mean, if you really go back to it, the first group of American citizens that were put on socialism is the Indian reservations. And if you wonder why, for the longest amount of time, they had the highest degree of, alcoholism, dropout rates, depression rates, all the negative manifestations of that occurring, because people's sense of self-worth is not derived by getting a government check. It's by what they've accomplished, the work they've put forth. Having a job and feeling like you've contributed to society is very important for us as human beings. Look, Indian reservations, which, because of, for whatever reason, guilt put him on a quasi-socialist system, and some of the highest rates of drug addiction, alcoholism, dropout rates, all the problems manifested themselves. And, one of the great things in this state, you've gotten some business activity, free market capitalism, largely around casinos, admittedly, but gotten people employed. If you wake up every day and you don't have a purpose in life and you don't feel like I'm contributing, what do you think you're going to ultimately do? Of course, you're sitting around all day. The devil's workshop is an idle mind. Drink and do whatever. And what's the destructive path that is?
So listening to that, and I wonder, Luke, I'm guessing it's the first time you've heard that as well. It's almost like you ever sometimes, radio talk show hosts never do this. You ever sometimes start going out on a rhetorical limb and realizing you're not exactly sure where the limb is going, and pretty soon it turns into word salad. And that's where I could hear Eric Hovde going like, oh, wait, I'm starting to belittle the Native American lifestyle and governance. Well, let's just call it socialism. Let's somehow say casinos cured it all. And boom, point made. I don't know that he was making whatever point he was looking to make originally.
I've never had that problem, but it sounds like Eric Hovde exactly had that problem.
You've never had that problem. Never.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no. It's very, and to say, I'm sorry, free market capitalism around casinos, it is the only source of revenue that was allowed for, you have to have a state issuing gaming license to be able to run those casinos. There is so much state involvement in gambling. I don't understand how you believe that that's the free market yes, he had no idea where he was going with that runaway train, Pat, and he just likes to have the boogeyman of socialism to beat up on, and wherever that leads is usually the rhetorical line that these candidates take.
Well, what they're always looking for is what he talks about when he talks about the dignity of work, which is code for you're lucky I gave you a job. You're lucky to have a paycheck. And if there weren't a minimum wage, I'd be paying you even less if I could get away with it. But at least we're making an honest person out of you. It's that particular entrepreneurial outlook, which is not meant to paint a broad brush with all entrepreneurs. I'm just saying there are some that get this attitude about their station in life compared to, the workers below them. And it's disheartening, but downright shameful when they then take that and try to run for office and try to call something socialism. Maybe start first with what got our communities, indigenous communities, where they are in the first place. The word genocide comes to mind. Completely removing a lifestyle, completely removing their land. And we're not going to go back and rehash, wars from 100 years ago. I'm just saying have a little bit better grasp of history before you start saying that something is socialism, when what you've got is people who were had almost everything taken away and given almost none of the tools to build a better lifestyle, to have opportunity. So if anything led to dependency, it was, the very people that, Eric Hovde wants to blame for this. And it just seems that he might be better off having some visits with members of the indigenous communities of Wisconsin before he tries to equate their lifestyle and their governance with socialism once again. But I also have a feeling this is not going to be the last time that we find that Eric Hovde has said things in the past, or even in the recent past, that are going to make people think twice and say, "Oh, wait, this is why he didn't get elected in 2012, and why, despite his willingness to pour $20 million of his own money into the race, it may not gain him that much more support than the Donald Trump base here in Wisconsin." Today's history lesson is coming up next. You're Up North. There's so many good tracks that you'll hear on the radio from Born in the USA. This one I think is underplayed. It's one of my favorites. And if you missed it earlier, Born in the USA came out 40 years ago today from Bruce Springsteen. So we'll hear a few more cuts of that this morning. As we mentioned earlier, on this day in 1979, Fleetwood Mac recorded Tusk using the USC Trojan Marching Band at Dodger Stadium. Born this day in 1937, Freddie Fender. Folks who listened to all of the various country rock crossover hits of the 70s will certainly remember this particular single, one of two big hits by Freddie Fender.
Wasted days and wasted nights I have left for you behind.
Freddie Fender passed away in 2006 at the age of 69. He was a rockabilly Tejano singer of the 60s, hit it big in the 70s with that song and Before the Next Teardrop Falls. And having family who had lived in South Texas, I've passed through his hometown of San Benito many a time, and his larger-than-life picture is still painted atop the water tower out there. Remember Dr. Ruth Westheimer? Yeah, still with us. Dr. Ruth is 96 years old today. Happy birthday to her. Actress Angelina Jolie is 49 today. Michelle Phillips from the Mamas and the Papas turns 80 years old today. And I got a couple more birthdays. Here's a birthday. Let's see. I said Michelle Phillips turns 80 today. Look who else turns 80 today. Roger Ball from the band in the 70s that was actually a precursor to anything Luke does with music. He's from the Average White Band. Again, underrated skit. Saturday Night Live sometimes plays some skits to death. This was not one of them. They could have done the Jazz Times 10 thing a few more times. Luke really doesn't like that I referred to him as the Average White Man. That was their original name, was Average White Man. And then they changed it to Average White Band. They're from Scotland.
Yeah, there you go. It's a good horn for, like, that's just
good,
catchy.
Yeah, it's a good. It has been sampled. It and many of their other tunes have been sampled repeatedly throughout the rap and hip hop world as well. On this day in 1977, JVC introduces VHS videotape at the Consumer Electronics Show. It will eventually prevail against Sony's rival Betamax system in a format war to become the predominant home video medium. And now none of them are around anymore. But do you have VHS tapes lying around anymore? Did you ever?
At my house? No.
Growing up.
Yes, growing up, yes. Like
Okay.
trying to figure out how to record things on TV with the VHS was like one of the first like figuring out how to use technology things that I ever did. So like as a young kid trying to sync up whatever I wanted to record was always a mission and something that we like tried very hard to do, and you had to make sure that you weren't cutting over some other recording like that. I remember that well.
We'd all work so hard to get the recordings just right, and then now gone. So Tony writes in,
my folks have a slew of them still. There's a ton of VHS around my folks' house.
Oh, see, it's still out there for a certain slice of the population. Tony's writing in, video is fad. I don't think it takes off. Of course, Tony also then follows up with radio all day because, Tony's a radio head and we love him for that. El DeBarge from the self-named family group is 63 years old today.
When it feels like the world is on your shoulders and all of the madness.
On this day in 1876, using the newly completed first transcontinental railroad line, a quote-unquote express train reached San Francisco from New York City after a journey of only 83 and a half hours, which, again, was light speed for its time. And then exactly 20 years later, on this day in 1896, Henry Ford completed the Ford Quadricycle, his first gasoline-powered automobile, and gave it a successful test run. Let's see. One more birthday. Al B. Sure. Not his birth name. Good stage name, though. Al B. Sure turns 56 and had this hit from the 1980s. On the National Day calendar, it's a short one. We already talked about National Cheese Day. It is also International Corgi Day. I love corgis. I've never had them, but we've been kind of a lab family. But Sherry and I have been talking that if we get a dog again in retirement, it'll probably be a corgi because we need something with smaller legs so that we can catch it easily. With the when our lab would run off, there was no catching that lab. But the short little leg, no, you get back over here. So. Plus, we'll fatten him up so he can't run really fast anyway.
All right, that's one way to do it.
Yeah. Let's see. This is a Firearm Safety Day, a day to remind you to lock up the guns that you have at home and store them safely. It's National Cognac Day, which is just a way of saying you paid too much for that bottle of brandy, I think. And
that's the most Wisconsin way to celebrate that day.
Isn't it?
That's just too expensive.
Did
brandy.
You really put cognac in that old fashioned? Well, yeah, it's brandy. It works. And then finally, and this is a weird one. This is what is called, now don't take this out on me. This is National Old Maids Day. And it is designed to shed light on single and childless women over the usual age of marriage. It dates back to just after World War II, when all the troops came home, but not all the troops. I think one thing people really lose sight of is that, the death toll for Americans. Well, America lost 420,000 fighting men and women who never came back from the war, mostly men, obviously, and all those women who were married, never remarried again, waiting for loved ones to hopefully return, but never did. And so the first quote-unquote old maids gathering was to celebrate the people who are unmarried, childless women, others who need to be celebrated and appreciated for their contribution to churches, schools, hospitals, offices, and general society. Now, of course, it's a way to make sure that we appreciate those who choose to not have children and a family of their own, and to no longer burden them with a societal stigma that lasted for generations. We've got Congressman Mark Pocan and congressional candidate Katrina Shankland coming up in the second hour of Up North News Radio, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Pat Reitlow. Hi, Brittany.
Good morning.
How are ya?
Good. How about yourself?
Good. How bad's it going to get tonight?
Shouldn't be actually too bad.
Okay, good. I can handle that. Let's see. Still some fog up north.
Yep, we got the fog.
Caught
What
up.
else we got? Yeah, tonight, flood watch.
Okay. Let's see. 30 seconds. We're back in. I'm going to put in the chat. Rob references a photo on Facebook. I don't know if you have time to open that in another tab or not, but that's there for you and Luke to look at if you want.
Oh, yeah.
All righty. And there's Katrina. Hi, Katrina.
Hi, how are you?
Good. We're going to do the weather. I'll be back with you in just a sec.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm going to put you back in the waiting room. See you in a bit.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Who has a lot of ground to cover in a very busy hour up ahead. State Representative Katrina Shankland is standing by, and we'll be talking about her campaign for Congress in just a few minutes here. One of three candidates running in the 3rd Congressional District Democratic primary. We will have Eric Wilson at this time tomorrow, Rebecca Cook this time on Thursday. Representative Shankland has been endorsed by Congressman Mark Pocan, and he happens to be our guest at the bottom of the hour. And I'm sure he has a lot to say about yesterday's congressional hearing involving Dr. Fauci and the circus-like behavior of some of the people who were questioning him yesterday. Chad Holmes from Bull Falls Radio will be joining us later in the hour. Also, we have Luke Mathers in for Greg Bach today. Brittany Merlot is here to tell us about the weather. But first, we have our Scotty Summer statewide text to win contest to tell you all about here. Now, again, for this, and Luke, you feel free to correct me as need be. The Scotty Summer text to win contest. It's a statewide effort where if you use the Civic Media app, you can text a keyword a few different times of the day. It changes each hour, or not every hour, but changes throughout the course of the day. You text that in, and you have a chance to win cool prizes.
Yeah, you've got chances to listen and win every other hour from 7 a.m. through the 7 p.m. hour. So think of it this way. From now until Friday, June 14th, next week Friday, if you're listening to your favorite Civic Media programs every other hour, from 7 a.m. through 9 a.m. through 11 a.m., so on, all the way through the 7 p.m. hour, you have a chance to win Wisconsin Dells prize packs, Milwaukee Brewers club level seats, and enter into a grand prize drawing for a stay in an excellent staycation location here in the state of Wisconsin in places like Lake Geneva, Door County, and others.
That's cool. And all you got to do is text a keyword? You should have texted a keyword.
Listen, every other hour, you're going to get a new keyword. You have that entire hour to text it in, and that will enter you in to win some of those prizes.
So here, for those,
a chance to win some of those.
So people are like, okay, shut up, Mathers. What's the keyword for this hour? Let Mr.
This
Brightlow
statewide
speak.
contest too, though.
It is.
Contest.
Yes. The keyword for this hour is drink. So just go to the Civic Media app and text, go to one of the stations that airs Up North News Radio, and text drink, DRINK. If you got that keyword in, you're entered into the drawings for these prizes. That's part of our Scotty Summer statewide text to win contest. Again, you've got till 8 o'clock to text that in our way. Brittany Merlot is here, and Brittany, you can't see, but there's actually another presence here in the studio in Chippewa Falls that has not been here before. Humidity. I was saying last hour, the lowest humidity I could find was 84%. Few places, fog and 100% humidity. It's that time of year now.
It surely is. We've got that warm front right now lifting across the state, and just north of the front is where the thickest fog is. So anywhere from Shawano to Clintonville, Stevens Point, Even into Medford and Superior, you are looking at visibilities less than a mile right now. Now that fog will start to eventually clear over the next hour. We are going to see mostly cloudy skies behind it, though. Not the prettiest day and not the best feeling either. Like Pat mentioned, it is muggy out there, and it's only going to get worse as we go through the afternoon. We're going to have some breezy winds out of the south, gusting up to about 20 miles per hour, pumping in some warm temperatures, that heat, that humidity. And in fact, highs today are going to soar to the low to mid 80s. So we're going to get warm, feeling like summer. And then, of course, a cold front is going to slam into us this evening. But first and foremost, by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to see a little disturbance really start to fire up some showers and storms anywhere across the state. I do think it's going to roll in from Illinois and across that state line into the southern half. But shortly after, showers and storms do fire up in the northern part too. So keep that in mind this afternoon. We could see some of those producing some hail. Otherwise, this evening, that cold front does move across the state, sweeps eastward. It looks the strongest into northwest Wisconsin, and it really wants to fizzle out as it hits the east areas and across Lake Michigan. So as it does so, it looks like it wants to start around 6 o'clock into northwest Wisconsin. We could see up to a half an inch to maybe an inch of rain in some of these storms. So there is a flash flood watch out there for you guys. That lasts until tomorrow morning. And of course, all of this rain will be gone by tomorrow afternoon. We'll have some cooler air, really shutting it all off.
Let's see. First off, from the text line, Ben from Oshkosh. Question for the weather part of the show. That must be you. Are we out of drought status yet? Where are we sitting as far as rainfall? And I quickly checked the map, and it looked like, with the exception of a little piece of central Wisconsin and up near Ashland Iron, there's really nothing left that counts as drought status, right?
Correct. I mean, just abnormally dry into Sauk County. I think it was Ashland Iron, and I think just a little bit of drought into Iron County, and that was it. Okay. So we're really, really good right now.
From Rob, good morning from Tigerton. It's cloudy and 63. The fog is lifting after near zero visibility. Brittany, my birthday is tomorrow. I'm hoping for a nice day.
Oh, happy birthday. I think tomorrow might be a little rainy in the morning, but we will see some sunshine to end your birthday.
And then he says, did you see the Bull Falls Radio Facebook page from last Friday of a picture of a cougar along Comet Road in the town of Germania near my residence? I just called that up, and I'm seeing, well, he says a cougar in his thing, and the text cat or the photo caption says a bobcat, potato, potato. Either way, if I see that in the woods, nope. Nope.
I'm leaving right now.
Yep, I absolutely am. All right. Brittany, thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye, guys.
All right. Reminder before we bring in Representative Shankland here that Civic Media has been broadcasting some of the candidate forums for the 3rd Congressional District Democratic primary, and that will be the case again next week. Next Wednesday, June 12th, the 3 candidates will be at UW-Platteville for a forum, 6:30. You'll be able to catch that on several Civic Media stations. We will be telling you much more about that in the days ahead. But now, for the first of 3 interviews today, tomorrow, and Thursday, let's bring in one of the candidates running for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District, and that would be State Representative Katrina Shankland. Representative Shankland, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for your patience. Kind of a busy Tuesday morning here, but we're so glad to have you here now. We had all the candidates on several weeks back, and we thought it was high time for an update on what you've been doing, saying, what you've been experiencing from the, my words, not yours, the special world that is Derek Van Orden's, if you catch him on social media versus the way that he tries to talk to the TV stations and in real life. DC's a mess. You don't need me to tell you that. So let's just start with an overview, Katrina. How are things going on the campaign?
I'm having so much fun. We're logging the miles and we're getting everywhere. So really enjoying the opportunity to meet new people, to catch up with friends I've met along the way over the last 8 months on the campaign trail. And, it's summer, so lots of new picnics, fairs. It's June Dairy Month, so dairy breakfast. And so really appreciating the opportunity to connect with voters. People are tuning in, and I appreciate Civic Media for hosting our 2 forums thus far. We have another one coming up, I believe, next week already. And so as we head into, the height of campaign season this summer, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share my message of being the only candidate in this race with experience, not only winning elections, but getting things done. And that really resonates with voters who know that we get one real shot at taking out Derek Van Orden. He is hopefully only just a one-term member of Congress. We're about to retire him. He's an extremist who really is not only not getting things done, but doing it in a weird way in Congress. And one example of that I really want to highlight is with the Farm Bill. So he likes to call himself the Cheese King. He likes to brag that he's the first member of Congress from Wisconsin who has been on the Agriculture Committee in more than a decade. But how did he use his position in Congress for the Farm Bill? He presided over $27 billion in cuts to food share, proceeded to claim that it wasn't a cut, but we know that, the same amount of money over 5 years absolutely amounts to a cut for families and seniors. And then on top of that, he had a weird conversation and debate in the House Agriculture Committee where he was essentially not only opposing the enforcement of child labor laws from the 1930s, but really making it clear that he doesn't think that a $1.5 million fine for violating child labor laws is fair. So that's who Derek Van Orden is. And I think the best contrast to someone like him is someone like me who's been in the legislature, getting things done, delivering results, and who knows how to win elections. So we're going to keep spreading that word.
And when you mentioned, some of his comments in the committee, I'm also reminded of the time a few weeks back when he, said, well, we wouldn't be sending food to Nazi Germany, so why are we sending food to China? Saying in so many words, let's just, like Trump did in his first term, let's just again cut off a major purchaser of Wisconsin agricultural goods, on a whim. It showed a fundamental misunderstanding of how markets work and the leverage that you have in diplomacy with or without those markets.
That's absolutely right. And I don't think he understands that Wisconsin farmers overwhelmingly rely on export markets. And I actually told that story at an event in Menominee just a couple weeks after he said it, because that's about a $340 million market for Wisconsin farmers. There were a number of farmers in the room who gasped audibly. They genuinely couldn't believe that he would say something so heavy-handed and wrong. And so I'm making it my mission to get the word out about Derek Van Orden, who he is, what he's doing, and what he's not doing. He's not delivering for the people of Wisconsin. And I think the best candidate we have to replace him is the one who has. I have co-authored and co-sponsored, as well as introduced 225 bills that were signed into law. And I personally presided over 3 different bills that created new programs for farmers to help them with water quality and conservation and soil health. And so I think that someone who served on the Agriculture Committee in Wisconsin, who's actually gotten things done for farmers versus someone who pretends to, Derek Van Orden, is a very powerful contrast.
225 bills. Now, how many of them were passed, easily because Democrats had the majority and so they'd pass whatever bills you wanted? How many of those 225 passed with Democratic majorities?
Zero.
So these are all bipartisan bills that you got done.
Absolutely.
Katrina Shankland is our guest state representative, and we're going to be talking more on the other side of the break here about the Farm Bill. Derek Van Orden continuing to insist, just outright calling people liars when he says that, they're accusing him of cutting nutrition programs, when that's exactly what it is. He's cutting nutrition programs. So we'll talk more about that with Katrina Shankland, and we'll have Congressman Mark Pocan coming on in just a bit. Chad Holmes to follow. Brewers fall in Philadelphia, opening a 3-game series there, 3-1. Rhys Hoskins with an emotional homecoming to Philadelphia and hitting a solo shot in the 7th for the Brewers' only run of the game. They'll do it again at 5:40, 5:05 pregame on several Civic Media radio stations. Back with Katrina Shankland after this. You're Up North. All right. Katrina, any either events or other topics that you want to make sure we hit in the next segment here? Or are you in good shape?
Yeah, I was planning on talking about the Farm Bill. How much time do we have, Pat?
We're going to have this. We're back in about 40 seconds, and then we go for about 9 more minutes.
Yeah, I think probably just talking about his record and, the race overall is probably where I want to go with this.
All right. Sounds good. Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA album, released this day 40 years ago, and that is in no way depressing as I contemplate how old that makes me. State Representative Katrina Shankland now, Congressman Mark Pocan coming up in just a few minutes here on Up North News Radio on this Tuesday morning, June 4th. Nice to have you along. Katrina serves in the legislature in a district that has its fair share of dairy breakfasts. Now she's in a congressional district that is wild with dairy breakfasts. We talked at length about this on the program yesterday, talking to somebody from the southeastern corner of the state who'd never been to one. Look, being a candidate, being a lawmaker is not the easiest job. But, man, those dairy breakfasts are fun, aren't they?
They're one of my favorite things. I actually love serving food at the Portage County Dairy Breakfast, and you get to see thousands of people. It's a wonderful experience. It's a great way to reconnect with people, and I especially enjoy chatting with farmers who will always tell me how things are going. And so, it's a good way to check in with our leaders in agriculture.
Yeah, and they like to see their candidates and lawmakers face to face. They get the mail and they see commercials and everything, but to actually get a chance to talk to you, especially those folks, and so many of them, will self-identify as independents. And so they just want to meet the person and talk to them about the issues. We've talked a bit about the Farm Bill here, and we've had several guests on already to talk about it. And last time Congressman Pocan was on here, we talked about the notion of Republicans pulling the old budget trick of saying that, something's not cut. We didn't cut any money to it, but if you don't add any money, you can't pretend inflation doesn't exist. Yeah, it's a cut. It's going to serve fewer people. But it's not just that, as you mentioned in the previous segment, Representative Shankland, but also things like the various conservation and environmental programs that are good for farmers, good for conservation. That one is an outright cut, and it would not be good for Wisconsin farmers or our natural resources.
That's absolutely right. So they actually there's a provision in the Inflation Reduction Act called Climate Smart Agriculture. And so that's really about keeping carbon in the ground, carbon sequestration, but it's also about supporting our soil health, keeping the soil on the ground and our water. And that, I think there's about $14 billion that they're taking from there and claiming that they're funding it into the conservation title. But really what that means is there's $14 billion fewer dollars for farmers overall, because if you're taking from one program to fund another, you're actually just only funding one program and not both, right? And I hope that people recognize that when Republicans constantly reassure them on Twitter and on Facebook, oh, no, it's not a cut. If they have to say it's not a cut, we know that we're winning. And we know that, the narrative is, hey, they're on defense. They are acutely and keenly aware of the fact that they are cutting and slicing and gutting key programs in the Farm Bill. And in addition to that, by offering that $27 billion adjustment, which would essentially amount to a cut because of inflationary costs, they have completely broken a long-standing and durable coalition of Democrats and Republicans who support the Farm Bill. The reason why SNAP food share benefits have always been in the Farm Bill is specifically to build a long-lasting coalition of folks from both urban and rural communities, Republicans and Democrats, to assure its passage. And let's keep in mind, the Farm Bill is already late. The deadline, the new deadline for the Farm Bill is September 30th. And I'm extremely concerned that because Republicans chose to make this a partisan bill that broke the longstanding coalition, that they may not even offer and provide the farm bill benefits into law by the deadline. And that's really just a lack of governing is what we continue to see from Republicans in Congress. It's one of the greatest reasons why I'm running against Derek Van Orden. I haven't seen him get things done. I've seen him spend a lot of time attacking his constituents and getting in fights with them and others in Congress, but I haven't seen him fighting for us. And we need a fighter for Wisconsin. We need someone who's going to put everything else aside to solve the problems with anyone who's serious about it, that keep the people of Wisconsin up at night. And that's why I'm running.
Yeah, the soft-spoken, kindly grandpa figure that I still see on local news coverage when he comes in to tour a farm or something. I think those news outlets would be better served if right after that they put up on the screen, some of his many, rambling tweets that are, hurling personal insults, even doxing people, as he did last weekend to somebody. But enough about Derek Van Orden. Let's get to you. And let's go with the hypothetical that it's a good Democratic November, that Democrats win back the House, the Senate, and Joe Biden's in the White House. And whether you're on the Ag Committee or not, you're still going to have this highly agricultural district. So beyond whatever could go in this farm bill in a split Congress, if you had that Democratic trifecta, what are the kinds of investments, what are the kinds of things would you like to see done for the 3rd Congressional District if you were able?
Absolutely. Well, if I were successful and serving in Congress, I would ask to be on the Agriculture Committee. Just as I'm on the Agriculture Committee now, I care a lot about Wisconsin's $105 billion agricultural heritage and industry. It's a key part of our economy. It drives so many jobs, and it's also just in a very important part of rural communities across Wisconsin. And so one of the things that I would do is I would actually want to boost conservation in agriculture. I've been talking to a lot of farmers who love conservation incentives and who are doing everything possible that they can, but many of them are oversubscribed, which means there's just not enough money to support the demand. And the demand continues to grow as we have so many different groups called producer-led watershed groups across the state, farmers who are joining together to protect our land and water. Another thing that I would really like to work on outside of agriculture, but in Congress, is to make sure that we codify Roe v. Wade into law, but also work to expand access to contraception and ensure that IVF is accessible to everyone. That would be one of my top priorities. And then finally, we need to work on strengthening our democracy. People are very attuned to the fact that it is hanging by a thread and that this November election is essentially existential. We know that there are so many attacks on our democracy, whether it comes from election deniers or people who no longer believe in the rule of law. And we need to do everything possible to strengthen civic participation and voter engagement in our democracy and make it easier for people to engage, whether it's working to overturn Citizens United, which is a key priority for me. I believe there's way too much money in politics and that we need to empower the average voter instead of the average PAC. There's a lot of work that we can do together in Congress to not only champion Wisconsin, whether it's championing dairy and agriculture, but also to bolster and strengthen our democracy.
And then finally, I was meeting with an assembly candidate yesterday in Eau Claire and let him know, because he'd never run for office before, saying, well, look, you're going to run your race, but people are also going to try to attach you to everything that Tammy Baldwin's done, Tony Evers has done, Joe Biden has done. So likewise, the guilty verdicts that came down last week for Donald Trump, you have Wisconsin, that is a narrow state. What's your own assessment in the 3rd Congressional District of what those guilty verdicts do to a Republican nominee? Obviously, his base is his base, but what do you think it means for your race, if anything, having that kind of thing hanging over you in a presidential election year?
For me, I don't feel that it's hanging over me. I think the law is the law and we're all subject to it. No one is exempt. And what it means is we're going to continue to build our growing and winning coalition of voters who aren't just Democrats who are with me because they want a candidate with experience who's going to be laser focused on delivering for them. We've already seen people who are independents and even some leaning Republicans who care about abortion and democracy showing up to my events, knowing that we're the best chance we have to take down Derek Van Orden and really restore progress to Congress and restore common sense to Congress. And I think we're going to continue to see independents and some Republicans who care about democracy getting into this building and growing coalition of folks who really care.
And that's exactly what I think is going to strike a chord with so many independents in the 3rd Congressional District. It's what they look for. State Representative Katrina Shankland, candidate for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District Democratic primary. Thank you, Katrina. Good to talk to you again.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to staying in touch.
You bet. Congressman Mark Pocan, who has endorsed Katrina Shankland, is coming up next. You're Up North. Oh, she already hung up. I was going to have her at least say hi to you. So, anyway, how are you? How are you doing?
How are you doing, Pat?
Well, I'm okay. I've been teasing it all morning, so I'm sorry that we're going to hit you right off the top with your favorite with old Marge. But that Fauci hearing was just so beyond the pale that I can't not start with it. You know.
That's fine. No, totally fine. She really is unbelievably embarrassing and damaging to the institution. So
I know, and I think, but I have my own thoughts on all the news coverage that's given to it, so I'll probably weigh in on that as well. So yeah, I just got a couple of promos and announcements to read off the top, and then we'll jump right into it. Anything in particular that you're working on right now, or want to make sure I don't forget?
We've started we've started the appropriation season. I don't think you're going to see a lot coming through. Congress Farm Bill is still kind of going to have to come to us, but it's not scheduled this week. So we're wondering if they're having issues. A lot of question marks, unfortunately, Pat. I don't know offhand, but glad to talk about anything.
Sure.
Yesterday was a filing deadline. Hey, by the way, did you see both? It looks like Joe Pluff and Dean Coffert filed to run for assembly.
I knew Pluff was running. I didn't know about Coffert. Holy cow. Am I the only ex-legislator not running? My goodness.
Exactly. I know. It was pretty funny. I was going through it. I'm like, whoa. I hadn't heard about
it's like
one.
Everybody, Peter Barca's back in the game. It's like, wow.
You have time. You're young.
I guess so. Look, I'm staying put right here. I am happy. I get to do a lot of good this way. All right. Usual routine. I'm going to tuck you in the waiting room so you can make some noise. Oh, before I forget, do you, Luke, sorry to pull this on you last minute if you can hear me, but Mark is a Grateful Dead fan, and I didn't ask if there was a Grateful Dead song you wanted to play.
I always like to be surprised. So.
You always like to be surprised? Yeah. All right. Luke Mathers loves surprising.
I'm on it.
So he's all over it. We'll see you in 2 minutes.
Yep. Sounds good.
to Up North News Radio, where we start by picking on one of our favorite listeners, Tony, who thinks we weren't going to start with the Grateful Dead, and he says, bold choice, Pat. Greg wouldn't stand for this. Well, yeah, Greg is off today. We hope he feels better soon, but Luke is on the job here and is spinning some Grateful Dead ahead of the appearance by Congressman Mark Pocan. But before we get to that, wanted to remind you, Brewers are in Philly. They lost yesterday 3-1. You can catch tonight's pregame starting at 5:05 on Civic Media Stations in Richland Center, Racine, Kenosha, Oshkosh, and in Park Falls. You can also sign up for our daily newsletter. Head to upnorthnewswi.com. Get your share of unabashedly Wisconsin news delivered fresh early every morning. And one news note, Up North News was the first outlet to be notified by the Evergreen Collaborative, a climate advocacy group, about a 7-figure ad campaign that started this morning in Wisconsin and Michigan. The ads feature, depending on the state, Governor Tony Evers or Governor Gretchen Whitmer, thanking them for working with President Biden to implement the Inflation Reduction Act and all the ways to fight the effects of a changing climate, create jobs, lower energy costs for households, businesses, school districts, and more. So look for those ads thanking President Biden, Governor Evers, and Governor Whitmer on your screens starting today. All right, let's bring in Congressman Mark Pocan, who is a bit of an expert on the Inflation Reduction Act, having been on the debate and all of its implementation. Congressman, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Pat. Thanks for having me.
What I discussed last hour in bringing up this particular group's ad buy is the need for, when people get done wanting to talk about Trump's trials and, the circus thing with the Fauci hearings yesterday, they want to get down to things that actually got done. And the Inflation Reduction Act has more than a few things there that are examples of actually getting things done.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a tale of two sessions. Last session, we got the Inflation Reduction Act done, which is investing into a lot of green energies, but also lowering the cost of our energy, lowering the cost of our healthcare. Don't forget, that's the one that has us negotiating for prescription drug prices, taking on Big Pharma for the first time ever. We also did the infrastructure bill. We also did the CHIPS and Science Act that just landed a bunch of jobs down in southeastern Wisconsin, and more. This session, we had 19 votes to elect a speaker, and that's about it. So there's a real contrast to what we got done when Joe Biden had a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate, and the cluster that I go to weekly with this session with the Republicans not knowing who's going to hit the roulette wheel and be the speaker for the week. So,
And it takes me, and I don't want to dwell on this a lot, but the only reason I'm bringing up the committee hearing yesterday with Dr. Anthony Fauci is to point out, what an embarrassment it was. But also I'll pick on the press. You don't have to do it, but framing it as, Dr. Fauci put on defense, slam with questions. Like, no, the actual story is a whole lot of members of Congress embarrassing themselves and basically engaged in bullying that didn't seem to be based in anything that we might call factual information.
Well, I think there's two things. One, Marjorie Taylor Greene was her embarrassing self, as always refused to call
and getting too much airtime. I'm sorry, just is.
But you know what? She's the intellectual leader, and I didn't mean to use that word correctly for the Republicans these days. So that tells you the deficit they have. But there was another member who quizzed him on all this money supposedly that scientists at NIH made off of this, and asked Dr. Fauci how much he made. She thought she had a great gotcha. And he said there was something he invented 25 years ago that he got a residual check for $122 on. And, she's like, well, you didn't get any of this $710 million. He's like, no, I didn't get any. And just the idea that they have no idea even what they're asking, just they're in gotcha moments when, Dr. Fauci, I think, is kind of an American hero for all the work he's done and continues to do for this country. And to watch, there's a reason why I'm not a big fan of the Oversight Government Reform Committee. I was on it as a freshman, got off it very quickly. It's there to have hand-to-hand combat. These days, it's become very performative hand-to-hand combat. I prefer to get things done, and that's why I serve on appropriations.
My favorite social media post about it from somebody that said, talking about Fauci, literally all this guy did was help save lives. And now, like once a year, he has to go talk to the dumbest people on earth. And that's basically what the oversight effort is. But you traded that in for appropriations, which again is what I call getting the work done. It's tough with a split Congress and endless budget standoffs. But where are we in early June? Staring down the appropriations, budget deadlines, shutdowns, everything else. How would you assess things right now?
Yeah, this is my busy season. The problem is the Republican majority is still unable to govern. So when you talk to Republicans who are more traditional, who are kind of quiet these days because this party does not represent them, they even admit we're not going to get anything done before the election. We're going to go through the performance of putting together the various appropriation bills, and we'll probably vote many of them out on the floor between now and August. But the problem is they still can't govern with the majority they have. So we will not get this done. Whether or not it happens in lame duck after the election will be a question, because there's some Republicans who don't want to do things in lame duck. At the end of the day, I guess, is, we have the single responsibility of passing the annual set of appropriation bills, and we've been pretty unable to do that with this majority. So we're going to do our best to get them done. We did get them done 6 months late last time, so there's always, I guess, that we might just get it done later than usual. But unfortunately, this session is going to go down in the history books as being completely inefficient.
There's a new item that says President Biden is about to sign an executive order that would enable him to close the border at a lower level than before of daily contacts. But he has always said that the better path would be to get actual legislation through Congress. And what a lot of Trump supporters forget is that Trump recognized the same thing. He said it during his presidency. The better path is to get a law. And there was one proposed out there because Trump's executive action got tied up in courts. So I guess what I'm saying, Congressman, is I kind of got a sense of deja vu as far as where we're going on the border compared to what we could have gotten done just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, well, don't forget, first of all, when Donald Trump had a Republican majority in the House and the Senate, he did basically nothing with the border. And then, they all complained that somehow Biden's doing something wrong with the border. And yet there was a bipartisan bill moving through the Senate, and Donald Trump said, no, you can't do it because of November. And all the Republicans rolled, and they've done nothing. And yes, the president can do some small executive orders, but at the end of the day, what we need are resources at the border. So when someone comes and claims asylum, which is basically the only legal process that people can do right now, it takes on average 3.9 years to have your case heard. So you're in the country for 3.9 years, whether or not you actually are an asylum case or not. The president in that bill had proposed 3 months. So you might not take that unbelievably arduous journey to get here if you think you might be turned around within 3 months. And Republicans refuse to fund it. So Republicans are complete hypocrites on this issue. What we need is funding. The president can't do that. That is required by an act of Congress. And that's part of why the dysfunction is there. It's Congress's fault.
What I hear a lot from your Wisconsin colleagues, Tom Tiffany especially, is that their bill, if I remember right, I think it's HR 2, but they said we already have a plan. We didn't need that bipartisan bill. And they're, of course, hoping that Trump wins and that there are Republican majorities in the House and Senate again, and they would pass, that bill. I guess I'm going to try to be fair for just a moment in asking you, is there an actual plan there? And is it, how different is it from what, you and others would like to accomplish at the border?
Look, this is an issue you're only going to get done in a bipartisan way. When I got to Congress in 2013, there was a bipartisan proposal that got through the Senate with 69 votes, which is almost unheard of, that was never taken up in the House because because at the time, the Tea Party was the extreme element. Now they're called the moderates. When, the MAGA wing is taken over, they never took it up. And then when Donald Trump came on board, clearly this has been politicized to an impossible degree. And right now it's still politicized and we can't get it done. So, their plan doesn't actually work in the way that we need something to. The only way you're ultimately going to get something actually done is in a bipartisan way. And this Congress, this Republican majority doesn't do that. In fact, they even passed rules that said the only way something can get to the floor is if it has a majority of votes in their caucus. A couple times Mike Johnson has broken that, but then he has to go through this suspension process where now it requires a 2/3 vote to pass the House. I mean, look, we're irreparably broken. What we need to do is figure out a solution, but we're going to have to do it together.
Speaking of your House Speaker, Mike Johnson, he made comments after former President Trump was found guilty 34 times on counts of criminal activity. And the speaker said something that I don't think has received nearly the attention it deserves, saying something along the lines of he has had discussions with justices and believes the U.S. Supreme Court should get involved in this state court case out of New York. That's way more than improper for a Speaker of the House to do and say, Congressman.
The party of smaller government, right? Like they claim, certainly doesn't do anything that is smaller government. In addition to that, I thought Wisconsin's own embarrassment, Derek Van Orden, did, most interesting. I think he tweeted this morning that Fauci should be sent to jail, not Donald Trump after 34 felony counts, not himself after trying to illegally carry a gun on a plane in Iowa, or being on the Capitol grounds on January 6th when it was improper to be on the Capitol grounds. But he wants to jail the person who helped us get through COVID. This is the Republican majority of 2024. This is the way they speak and talk and what they think they can do. They think they can, convince Supreme Court justices to go beyond their jurisdiction, and they think they can jail people that they're not happy with. And that's what courts are for. That's why jury of peers convicted Donald Trump, and they just don't believe in the process at all.
Can I just then transition to the Hunter Biden trial going on this week, just long enough to note the hypocrisy of favoring the prosecution of the president's son for something they would have never gone along with imagine if Donald Trump Jr. were being prosecuted for not properly registering his gun with the government. I mean, they'd be going a little wild at that. But
the hypocrisy, Pat, is like off the charts. Here's my real problem, and what makes me sad. I've done this for a long time, and I've known you for a long time. The fact that they're trying to tear down the institution of our elections, that you can have and trust our elections, which you have to be a democracy. And then they attack the institution of the media because they want to put out false information. They don't want a fair arbiter of what information is out there. And now they're trying to attack the courts, another institution that as a democracy we rely on. If we are not a nation of laws, you're a nation of men, and that can lead to a cult-like behavior like we have. I have to admit, this is as someone who's been in this for most of my life, adult life, I feel saddened that this is now the acceptable behavior. And I wonder when more people will push back to try to get back to normal.
You and me both. So we'll wrap up here, as I did with Representative Shankland running for Congress and talking about the Trump verdicts and essentially just how they play in Wisconsin, in the 3rd Congressional District for her, in the 2nd Congressional District for you, for folks that are just kind of going about their everyday lives. Where do you think this ultimately shakes out with, people who are not part of the Trump or Democratic base?
And that's the group that everyone seems to care about at election time, right? The movable folks. I got to think that if you see a jury of peers that the jury was selected and approved by the Trump legal team, and that jury of peers, including someone who said they got their news from Truth Social, Trump's own social media outlet, unanimously convicted him of 34 counts, felony counts, for paying off a porn star. Think of all this. This is like someone writing this in the good old days after a few bong hits, right? And this is now reality. I got to believe that people are going to look at this and have a hard time moving to Donald Trump who weren't already there.
Look, the 2016 thing of, he's somebody new, that novelty has more than worn off. Congressman Mark Pocan, thank you so much, as always. Always great to catch up with you. Thanks for your time, and take care out there.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. Take care.
All right. When we come back, we'll talk to Chad Holmes. We'll talk about what's happening up on Bull Falls Radio, the topics that he's covering up there, whatever else is on his mind as we get set to wrap things up for a Tuesday morning on Up North News Radio.
Hey, baby.
Hello. There's a puppy in the studio. Is that Aurora, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tomorrow on the program, we'll continue our interviews with the candidates in the 3rd Congressional District Democratic primary, talking to Eric Wilson at 7:06 tomorrow. And then at 7:30, we'll have our usual homeroom segment. And I believe we're talking about sustainability in school districts and trying to keep energy costs down and mitigate the effects of a changing climate. Chad Holmes hopefully will be joining us very soon as well. But first, with Luke Mathers in here, pinch hitting for Greg Bach, I wanted to tell you that I watched a new documentary yesterday on the Disney Channel about Jim Henson and all about the early years of the Muppets, long before Sesame Street, long before the Muppet Show. And I mean, I've just always been a Muppet fan. Not all of Henson's work, like I was too old for like Fraggle Rock and things like that, but I would just highly recommend it. It was just a very good telling of Jim Henson's story. So just wanted to throw that out there. I didn't know where you were on the spectrum of Muppet fandom.
I mean, I grew up with Muppets, so it was never like a core piece of what I remember growing up. They were always there. They were always scattered around the edges. So I'll have to learn more.
I would think it's because in the 70s, late 70s, when the Muppet Show was coming on, and that's I had grown out of Sesame Street, and yet here come the Muppets now telling like kind of more grown up jokes and grown up humor.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of sticks with you. And so I've always been a fan. What did I say at Christmas time? What's my favorite movie? Muppet Christmas Carol. Everybody else is going with Jimmy Stewart. He's visited by an angel. Oh, no, I'm going with the frog. Okay, I'm going with the frog. Chad Holmes.
Give me Kermit.
Give me Kermit. And Michael Caine, please. Great movie. Chad Holmes, sorry for stepping on your time there, but we were just going over the Jim Henson documentary on Disney that I was streaming yesterday. How are you?
I'm doing good. I apologize for being late. I hit the link and it just, that circle, it just spun round and round and round for 90 seconds. I finally closed it out and I came back in and spun round and round and round, and last 2 days here, and I don't know what's going on, but been having little issues getting connected in different ways. So I do apologize for
lucky you, the guy that you need to talk to is right up there in the upper right corner of your screen. I believe Luke Mathers handles all of these technical things. No? Not
Mr.
you?
Wizard, huh?
I'll have to send some support. I'll see what I can do.
And by the way, before we let Mr. Mathers go, and again, we hope Greg feels better soon, but I need to, forgive me, Chad, I need to admonish Mr. Mathers, so let me step over here for a minute. You had a cute dog in the studio and didn't hold her up until now?
She's here every time I come, pretty much. I don't come without Aurora at
Holds
this point.
Aurora up, just
she can't,
adorable.
She's
adorable.
too small to be left in the kennel all day, so she comes with.
All right. I love working at a dog-friendly place, though. I think that's awesome. Chad, you have dogs, pets, parakeets, anything?
I have a hard enough time taking care of myself.
Well, given your schedule.
Oh man, and I've thought about it, and I would have no idea how to take care of a pet. Really, I mean, because I got friends, and it's like, what? I have no idea how I would do it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's probably the best for everybody involved.
I guess so. I know we talked about getting a dog again. We had one for 13 years when the girls were young, and we talk about getting one in retirement. But yeah, if you travel just enough, it's part that, but it's also part. I realized when we were younger, you could handle some things quickly, easily compared to now. And what I mean is hearing a dog at 3 a.m. going, oop, oop, and knowing you got to rush that dog outside or you're going to need some carpet cleaner at 2 a.m. real quick. I don't miss that. Just me. A little bit of news since yesterday. And I think Up North News should take some of the credit for this. We put up a quote card on social media, a quote from Tony Evers from yesterday, saying something along the lines of Robert Atwell was a man of honor, blah, 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 or integrity. And then hours later, he reversed course, Robert Atwell did, and said he would not stay on the UW Board of Regents past his term, being a Scott Walker appointee. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe there are folks on the conservative side of the aisle that are finally getting tired of being obstructionists for obstruction's sake.
Man, you woke up on the right side of the bed apparently this morning. Optimism here that we're turning a page. We're going back into.
I'm merely asking the question. I am not. I'm not predicting it at all.
Chad, it looks like you muted yourself, bud.
Oh, Chad hit you.
I don't know what happened
over there, bud.
Man,
there you go.
My hands must have hit there, and it's like we got me going here, and it's like wonderful. This utopia of people coming together and actually serving.
Kumbaya, everybody. Yeah.
Actually, it's sort of along the same lines that I was thinking about, and I know that you probably heard about this as well, that former Senator Doug Jones is coming to Wausau.
I was going to ask you about that next. He'll be in Wausau tomorrow talking about Medicare and Social Security.
And I'm going to have a chance to talk to him, and it's going to make for a big Thursday show, Pat Kreitlow and Doug Jones. So a couple of powerhouse political figures on my show on Thursday.
I know who should be in the bigger font on that one, but continue.
But I thought about, and I think you kind of touched on it earlier in the hour as well, about the kind of folks that were questioning Dr. Fauci yesterday. And when I think of Doug Jones and I think about Tommy Tuberville, who replaced him in Alabama, and you think about a number, and you think about Katrina Shankland, who you had on previously, about the people that come in and want to get things done. And I often talk about the workhorse versus the show horse.
Right.
And I often compare our U.S. senators, because you see, Ron Johnson appearing on all these right-wing television and radio programs all the time, and then you got Tammy Baldwin, who just gets the job done. She's not, putting her face out there every single day in order to, show how important she is. She just does the work. And I think of guys like Doug Jones, who came in there and was able to win an election, with the help of a really bad candidate, but he came in there and he did the job. And I think he handled himself exceptionally well for a senator in a state like Alabama, where there's a lot of different pressures pushing you. And then you hear some of the folks that were in front of the microphone yesterday, and you read some of the social media about, basically calling Dr. Fauci a murderer. And it's just
embarrassing.
It was
embarrassing,
but it was also depressing.
Yeah.
And I just love the idea of being able to talk to people who really care about getting things done. And I think, along with the line you say, I mean, it's wonderful to think about people on both sides of the aisle coming in and saying, hey, we got to accomplish something. We got to make sure that we make the lives of our constituents better. So, and again, it's just, I hope that maybe we are getting to that precipice where better is in the future.
See, look at the optimism that we're spreading here. That's what we're all about here. That's our new brand, optimism. At least until tomorrow, Chad Holmes coming up next on Bull Falls Radio and the Civic Media app. Thank you, sir. Have a great morning.
Bye-bye.
Luke, thanks for pinch hitting. We'll talk to you a little later on as well. Hope all of you have a great day. And again, keep in mind that we will be back here tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Thanks for joining us up here on the lake. We'll see you tomorrow up north. Boom.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great day.